traffic has died down here. So how about some fun video of the back way to Santa Rosa? I'm on Highway 12 here, 12 west from Interstate 80 at, what is this? Kirkland Ranch Road. It just always feels so good to be headed to the Schultz Museum. Lots of interesting scenery out here. Oh, even a golf course. We're headed to Shangri-La, or as Fred Flintstone used to say, Shangri-La-di-da. Those are some pretty funny scenes in that cartoon where they make it up to these very iffy mountain roads, like seemingly leading to nowhere. Okay, now we're going to make a right turn. I was just thinking of, when was it? Man, time flies. Several years ago, I was going to see Ron Howard's 8 Days a Week documentary in Santa Rosa, and I'd take these back way in there, this back way. And I must have seen it like 8 days in a row. And just kind of let the movie, envelop me, envelop my consciousness. By the time I'd seen it so many times, I'd picked out two key words started to jump out at me in the movie. It's interesting how my brain can do this kind of subconscious analysis until after you've seen it yay many times, something suddenly jumps out at you. That happened to me with Paddington 2 also. Oh, I must have seen it 24 times until finally I started to unlock a meaningful analysis of that. First of all, of that statue falling from the great height inside the dome of the cathedral. Now, one of the words I picked out was John's use of the word natural. And picked out another word to represent Paul's approach. It might have been production or something similar to that word. And my analysis was that Paul and John eventually over time kind of came to loggerheads, because John wanted to get back to that authentic, sparse rock and roll sound, and Paul wanted to, fancy everything up. Not only sonic wise, but you know, all kinds of wise, including the cover of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. So that was my analysis, and also I noticed how Paul and John started drifting apart, and my hypothesis was that's why Paul wrote is the name of that song Lonely People? Ah, look at all the lonely people. I started too low. Ah, look at all the lonely people. I think I had noticed they'd started drifting apart songwriting wise. And that's actually could be the true meaning of that song. Paul was feeling lonely, not writing as integrally as he had been with John. Well, but being in the band like that, the Beatles, is such an intensive experience. I mean, how long can you do that? I don't want to call it burnout, but some related word applies. It's like you have to take a long break to have more life experiences. So that time they were in the band, think of all that massive amounts of time they spent on the road, unable to lead a normal lifestyle. They're missing out on the very thing that they needed in order to have fodder for, you know, new songs. They needed to have those life experiences. So that's a catch-22. So yeah, creativity requires regular downtime. And downtime seems like downtime, but you're absorbing things. Isn't that what a newborn baby does? Absorbs and absorbs. Well, and for Paul, he had all of those memories of listening to his father play piano. So for years, as a young person, he was absorbing all of those chord changes and song structures. wasn't John studying to become a visual artist at art school? I think he was. So that's an interesting transformation. I've always wondered about the connection between vision and music. Music like evokes all of these visual scenes in our minds, right? You know, my thought is, can't remember if I saw this somewhere else also, but it really seems like vision is the dominant sense, our dominant sense in, well, at least modern humanity. Has anyone done studies on babies to see what they're starting with? Are they more relying on vision as like their platform that they jump off of to develop everything else? Is that what they're genetically endowed to do, or are the genetics kind of adapting themselves to modern times? Sonoma County line. Just look at the tremendous sense of place that all this geography here brings us. And let's head over to Petaluma. Is that the sun up there? Yeah. Well, in the tactile sense, also seems very basic. And I remember doing a little research on this, and I seem to recall that some scientists think that it's historically the most basic sense. And with that, you can also construct these mental models of space and geography. But so vision, then you seem to be able to take it in quicker. So is that what's happening then with the development of human senses? First, tactile abilities gave us that ability to build these mental models, and then vision came and gives us all of that, gives us like a shortcut to that, to a quick way to build those mental models. Where would hearing fit in? That's also kind of tactile, isn't it? Because the hammer, what is that part of the eardrum where there's a kinetic aspect to hearing? A vibrating eardrum. Is that also playing on these tactile mental models, but in a different way? Tactile spatial models, spatial mental models. So then, what's going on here? That's not good. Hope this is another shortcut to Petaluma. So then when we combine vision and hearing, do something simultaneous, you can really go to town, and that's, I guess, what cinema does. And all these complex combinations of vision and sound. Both ways, which separately tie back to the tactily created mental models, but now they're kind of dancing with each other. What a complexity that is, huh? How could anyone ever untangle that? Well, and in trying to do that, we mustn't get tripped up over, primitive stimuli, which is what the temptations of positivism. When we're trying to untangle this complex interweaving, going? It seems good to turn left here, doesn't it? That is especially when we need to take into account concepts. And those don't easily reduce to primitive mental stimuli, primitive sensory stimuli. That also is extremely complicated. So, what are we dealing with here? We're dealing with an unimaginably complexity at an unimaginable order of magnitude once we interweave all these things together, such as what might happen in a movie, a well-produced movie with meaningful music that's synced to the visual happenings. Not only does the music evoke images and also concepts, but the characters in the movies actually convey concepts explicitly, straight out of their mouths. So now we got all these sciences and academic disciplines coming at stuff like this from different angles, but then those fields themselves aren't integrated with each other. So what does that? What does the integration? Well, that's the job of philosophy. Something has to do it. And I was surprised. I had almost given up on something that I almost took as common sense, that you need philosophy to integrate all the disciplines and fields. And I'd read so much, heard so much about Clark Kerr's multi-university and all that thing. The thought process is that we've got all these separate silos that don't rarely find ways to come together. Well, now what? That was 12 back there. I think I made a mistake. Let's go back there. Four corners. Train Town. Why don't I remember that? All right, let's come back later. Well, we're back to some more secluded roads here, and without planning on it, I really did find the back way again. This has to be the way I was going before when I was coming to see Ron Howard's 8 days a week. I was just thinking how lucky I've been not to have burned myself out in any mentally based profession like academia, and I still have this feeling that my academic career hasn't even started yet, although I've been in it quite a while. That seems to be a real trick, isn't it? Is maintaining that what do you call that feeling? Kind of happy to get up in the morning feeling and face the daily tasks that you have set out before you. Oh, I am so not the type of person that can tolerate, that kind of stress where you just have to crawl through the day, and become kind of like an automaton. Is that the right word? Like a robot. Oh my God. What a trade-off is made in academia. It's like a deal with the devil. You provide this standardization. Well, a less prestigious term would be the sausage factory. You got, students coming in and it's like they're going through a sausage factory being made into sausages. Well, and they're going through all of these various kinds of standardized, courses that have been developed and grading standards and expectations and it's really all the sorts of things that stifle creativity, wouldn't you think? I don't know. Is there a happy medium somewhere in there? For the student going through, the student only goes through the course once. The professor is teaching it multiple times over a career. So that's when it starts to become, repetitive and you have to turn it into something else to enjoy it. Rubrics. That's the scary word right there. Rubrics. It has such an artificial taste to my mind. It's like professor could virtually make any rubric. There's an arbitrariness, a feeling of arbitrariness to it. Jumping through hoops. What kind of hoops do you got to jump through? 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet off the ground. Well, it's not really the height of the hoop that's important. It's the hoop jumping. You know? Which is abstracted from all those particular heights. I'm afraid that a lot of those rubrics are focused on, you know, the wrong measurements, the wrong details. But, so that makes hoop judging quite an art, really. How do you grade papers, really, when you're looking for the hoop jumping per se? Not the height of the hoops off the ground, or not the size of the hoops, you know, or whether or not they were rotating when you jumped through, or set on fire, or had flashing lights. It's just that you were able to get through a hoop and a succession of hoops. So what is the hoop? Well, some kind of conceptual structures, obviously, you know. We don't want to get tripped up on sentences, qua sentences, or propositions, or even narratives qua narratives. It's more a matter of semantics that's most important. See, now I'm just blathering on here. Probably lost everybody who's listening, but what's needed is a give and take, so that I can be prompted to rephrase things, come at it from a different angle, portray my ideas in a way that meshes with people's lived experiences. That's you know, almost impossible to do when you're in a large lecture hall lecturing, especially. Can you imagine lecturing to 500 people? So it's almost as if that whole setup is untenable. That whole sausage factory setup, in that sense, you know, just rush them through the large lecture hall. So it gets into what we can think of as learning in spite of everything that's going on. How do you surf that wave? There's a wave there of, what do we want to call it? Novel analysis. The last thing you want is to be so afraid of failure, you know, that you end up building yourself like an impregnable ship. Riding through the, you know, sailing through the rough seas of knowledge and knowledge creation. I don't really think it works well that way, and I know you can't really protect yourself or construct such secure ships when you're trying to make new discoveries, create new knowledge. The better analogy is like surfboard and riding a wave. Starting to recognize some of these barns and things. I think we've just entered Santa Rosa. Yep. All right, let's get ourselves over to the proper destination.